But right now, the brand new leader of the opposition is the steel in the spine of Conservative politics. I'm so pleased that he is now on the front lines. Peter Dutton and I spoke a bit earlier today, where I passed on those compliments and talked about some very big issues.
Paul, thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. I've got a great team together. We've got a lot of hard work ahead, but we're dedicated to that, and we want to make sure that we can get rid of what inevitably is already starting to show signs of a bad government within the next 3 years. So lots of hard work ahead, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, Peter, let's look at the first month of Labor. Prices are up on everything, everywhere. Energy is so unreliable, people are being told not to use their dishwashers. Interest rates are rising at the biggest numbers they have in decades. Yet the media think that Albo is the second coming. But normal people, we can tell the difference, can't we?
Paul, I think you're spot on. I think people are starting to have flashbacks of 2007 here, where people dumped John Howard and thought they had the new best and brightest in Kevin Rudd, and the wheels fell off pretty quickly. At least it took Kevin Rudd about 12 months. But as you point out, what we're seeing already, I mean, Chris Bowen looks like he's aged about 20 years in the last 3 weeks. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And all of the levers are there for him to pull. Angus Taylor dealt with all of these issues on a daily basis. Behind the scenes, you didn't hear about it, and yet this government's in crisis mode on energy, and families instinctively know that when Labor starts to spend, which they're just on the cusp of doing, it's going to put upward pressure on interest rates. So interest rates are going to be higher under Labor than they otherwise would have been. So I think there's a lot of angst and a lot of uncertainty out there at the moment, and I really feel for people in their businesses and in their households. Their budget's being stretched, and they've got a government with training wheels on that I just don't think they know what they're doing.
And their war on small business has only just begun. Today it became financially harder to employ people. They want to increase the amount that you have to pay people in superannuation, which either means a real wage cut for workers, but definitely an increase in the cost of being an employer. And all of this, of course, happens. Why? Because only 2 of the people in the cabinet have ever run a business. One of them is a senator who had his own wine label.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd have to trumpet those credentials though when that nobody else around you can even make a claim like that. Like none of them, not one of them, has been in small business. They haven't had an overdraft. They haven't had their house as security for their business. They haven't employed staff. They haven't been the last person to get paid each fortnight. It's a bit of a rock show. I mean, the unions are, applauding and jumping for the sky. They've won lotto under this government. They'll get everything they wanted, but I'll tell you who'll suffer. It's the small businesses, and if you price Labor out of existence, then those jobs will evaporate. And whilst I'm happy for those workers, I really worry about their jobs because there's a lot coming small businesses' way. The government just has no affinity, no understanding, no sympathy for small business, and I really think they are going to cop it squarely between the eyes because they're going to have increased interest payments on their mortgages, on their overdrafts, on their equipment leases, and this government just won't have any sympathy for that whatsoever because ultimately, Paul, I mean, many people within Labor look at small business owners and think that they're cheating and profiting off the back of their workers, and that, of course, is not the story of small business. These are families that have sacrificed their own families' businesses and assets, and they want more for their kids, and they've helped pay mortgages of the families that they employ, and Labor should really remind themselves of that.
What do you think it means that the first person China wanted to talk to was the man who used to send them his homework and let them read his speeches before anyone else?
Well, I guess, yeah, they wanted to catch up with old friends straight away, so Richard's, number one on speed dial, so call him. I don't know whether he's been able to get any assurances out of his counterpart as to whether they'll stop the nuclear weapons program or whether they're going to stop the massive rate at which they are interfering with all of our democracies, the cyber attacks which still continue at industrial scale. I presume he got some of those assurances instead of just a pleasant exchange of ideas and reminiscing on old times and old catch-ups. But I think we should be very careful about what Labor's doing here. Yes, everyone wants to see a normalisation of the relationship, but let's be serious about the reality of what's happening in the Indo-Pacific, in our world. This problem's not gone away, and if the Labor Party pedalling softly, which I think they're doing on submarines, and they're making every excuse at the moment to not go ahead with the nuclear submarines. I think that is a very dangerous path to go down. So they should be open and honest with what was discussed, which of course hasn't been the case.
Now, just finally, when Albo became head of the Labor Party, he said that every policy was under review. Is that what you're planning to do as leader?
Well, Paul, there are good policies, articles of faith that we've adhered to for a long period of time. They're central to the values of the Liberal Party. They will remain. They're rock-solid commitments, and we'll make sure that we adhere to those into the future. I'm not going to be a Labor light opposition leader. I'm going to stand up for what I believe our supporters support and want for their businesses and for their families. I'm going to support good policy, as I say, when the government puts it forward. I'm desperately worried about the energy crisis at the moment because I believe that Labor is trying to transition into renewables too quickly, too fast, and not sensibly. And it's obvious to all that the gas companies, the coal companies have heard the warnings from Labor because they don't support gas and coal. And if they march too quickly toward renewables, then we are going to see prices go up and we are going to see the lights go out. And that's something that we will fight against, and we'll implement policies to clean up what is going to be a mess. And it should be very clear to all Australians by now that it is going to be tough under Labor over the next 3 years, a lot tougher than what it needs to be. And they'll make bad decisions, and our policies will reflect a very big difference between the Labor Party and the coalition at the time of the next election. If we do that, then we can get rid of a bad government in 3 years, and that's what I'm absolutely dedicated to doing.